Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Cavan Klinsky, co-founder and CTO at Healthie. Healthie is a SaaS company that offers infrastructure for virtual first healthcare companies to launch and scale provider services. Cavan, I'm so excited to chat with you, not only in this new lens and landscape of healthcare where things are extremely transitioning into so many different ways and people are looking for more alternative ways to get healthcare services. Companies are seeing the frustrations of customers and offering or getting the right solutions and things essentially for their healthcare needs, but also APIs and white label kind of platforms like what you're working on that I think are accelerating the growth of a lot of different companies that it's assisting and helping whose customers are. But before we get into all that good stuff, what were you doing before you started Healthie?
Yeah. So before Healthy, I was an undergrad. I met my co-founder my freshman year of college and ended up leaving after that first year to work on Healthy full time.
Amazing. It was the inspiration and what was the catalyst behind Healthie in particular and healthcare services?
Yeah. So I got really interested in healthcare and healthcare technology. I think as a lot of people did in the industry, which was as a patient. I had open heart surgery after my freshman year of high school, and that whole process, right? Prepping for the surgery, having for the surgery, and then especially recovering from the surgery. I basically 8 weeks over the course of the summer where I was kind of stuck in my bedroom, couldn't run around, couldn't exercise, couldn't do the stuff I normally spend summers doing. So I ended up playing way too many video games, but also got seriously into coding, built my first web application that summer, and then also started to read a lot of like health and fitness blogs, trying to live vicariously through other people when I was really on the med. So recovered from that, did a lot of freelance web development in high school, went to college where I met my business partner who was getting her MBA. She had come from healthcare consulting, and she had really basically identified that 65% of Americans are overweight or obese. There's a whole group of people clinically trained to help them. Why does nobody see a dietitian? So we got started out building software tools to allow dietitians to run their business and deliver care to patients. Turns out that really nobody in the industry trying to deliver this really high-tech care had a good tool that they could build on to do that. So we moved from just serving dietitians to our current business model, which is being this kind of core infrastructure platform for virtual care.
Yeah. And what were companies using beforehand? And as a preface, I worked in the pharmacy for like 6 years in independent pharmacy. So I've seen so many different types of software and they're so clunky. They're almost look like legacy technology, even if it's brand new. Part of it's compliance. Part of it is just a lack of I guess, attention to UI and UX and the experience of their customers. But what was the incumbent beforehand and what is Healthie allowing them in terms of these providers to do now?
Yeah. So I think really before Healthy, our customers were faced with three choices. None of them were particularly good. Choice one was to try to cobble together like 8 different solutions, which was a nightmare, and keeping that data in sync is a mess, and it still's not really doing what you want. Yeah. Option two was trying to use like pre-existing electronic health record and patient management software. But the reality is like the type of software that works well when you break your foot and go into an urgent care clinic is not the right type of software if you're trying to build these virtual first proactive healthcare organizations with these really groundbreaking care models. So then what you saw happening were that a lot of the larger ones were building everything in-house. And when you think about kind of what you're building, right, to be able to get to the part of the software that's really unique to you, you have to kind of rebuild everything that's table stakes, right? Everything from handling time zones correctly, worrying about daylight savings time, storing all this data in a compliant way, making sure your servers are running 24/7. And that was just costing a huge amount of money. And it's not kind of what these companies are really great at. What they're really great at is delivering patients. So that's kind of really where Healthy comes in. So with Healthy's platform, we're a solution that you're able to get up and running very quickly, right? But you don't hit walls because we're API first and fully brandable. You continue to extend it and tailor it for your care organization. And we're also really built for people who want to build these long-term relationships with their patients, not just see them once every couple of years when they have an acute medical issue. So that's really what we do. And I think why we've had a lot of success because we're able to be kind of that really good solution, better than those other three.
Yeah. And you mentioned in that explanation, this whole advanced kind of care or the advanced service. I can't remember how you said it in particular, but it's essentially the healthcare offering and the connection from the company and the patient. And when you say this improved or advanced kind of, I don't know if it's personability or care system or care experience, what are we missing and what are companies trying to do and what is Healthy allowing them to do in terms of the long-term relationship that wasn't allowed? Is it part of just understanding that customer or that I guess patient and knowing their history and their journey and having access to that information? Is it more than that? What in particular is allowing this increased level of experience?
Yeah. So Healthy works with a very wide range of companies, right? Behavioral health, addiction treatment, sleep, weight loss, chronic pain, therapy. So big range. But what really unites our customers is that them trying to build a strong long-term relationship with the patient, right? And to do that, it's not just kind of one-time episodic care, right? It's not somebody goes into the doctor once. They are trying to engage with their patient on a very frequent basis, right? They want to have educational content. They want to see a data feed of how the patient is doing. They want to be able to have frequent appointments. They want to be able to do asynchronous messaging. And they need that all to be very tightly integrated with kind of some of the more traditional parts of how care is delivered, right? With the taking notes on visits, with e-prescribing, with scheduling, et cetera. So it's really kind of that blend of basically being focused on patient engagement while tied in with the EHR that I think sets Healthy apart. Like a lot of electronic health record systems are really wrappers around a billing module, right? Like they're really good at submitting insurance claims to payers. And if you look at how a lot of them make money, that's how they make money. They take a percentage of the claims. With Healthy, we've taken a very different approach. We've had a patient engagement side of the business since day one. We don't like make a percentage of insurance. Like that's not our focus. We have that functionality, but it's not what drives us. What's really like our core DNA is kind of enabling that strong provider-patient relationship.
Yeah. And what does that mean from, I guess, a patient point of view? And how I see it is that depending on if I have to move or switch providers and care, if they have the same infrastructure, I'll seemingly have the same experience. And what does that mean in terms of accessibility from a patient point of view that has never really been around? If I'm signing up for a different insurance provider or a different healthcare service, it's this portal, it's that portal, everything is so fragmented. What does it mean for the experience of the user moving forward?
So I think from an M patient, really the main benefit is you're using tech that feels like tech that's built by people who care a lot about technology and are going to build it, right? Like I know as a patient, like if I try to like sign into like my primary care physician's patient portal, it feels like something from 2005 and maybe a lot of it is, right?
Yeah.
So the main benefit is that like patients and really everybody has gotten really used to these consumer grade experiences, right? Like one of the things we thought a lot when we were starting Healthy is we want the patient side to feel as easy to use as and engaging as something like Instagram, right? Or these days like a TikTok. So that's really the main benefits of patients. Healthy is a B2B company, so we really sell to customers and let them kind of customize the platform. But one of the things that we're really focused on doing that is really building a open platform and not building like a walled garden. Like traditionally, a lot of EHRs, it's been very hard to pull data out. They've been very aggressively against integrating with other services. And at Healthy, we really take the opposite approach. We have an API first architecture that makes it very easy to kind of, for providers and for care organizations to pull all the data out, to transfer to other places, to pull data in. And that enables these really powerful care experiences for both providers and for patients.
Yeah. Tell the audience what we might not know about having to deal with building through HIPAA and compliance and all those things and barriers that others say, whether it's B2C or other B2B models that don't necessarily have the same restrictions. What does that mean in terms of the timeline to build? What does that mean in terms of implementing, let's say, new products or features? How does that change the environment of building, being that you've built a lot of products and now you've Healthy kind of the core that you're working on?
Yeah. So one of the main benefits we offer a lot of our customers, especially early stage customers, is the fact that we take a huge amount of that security compliance off their plate. HIPAA is a bear, right? It's really something that influences every product decision, every engineering decision, every vendor decision. Yeah. And thankfully for Healthy, we've been HIPAA compliant since day one. So it's something that's always been in our DNA, but I get asked a lot about companies who are maybe a little more generic B2B, who are thinking about serving the healthcare market. And they ask me kind of what it takes to become HIPAA compliant. And a lot of the time it involves ripping out and kind of replacing a lot of stuff. The other thing I think people don't really realize about HIPAA is HIPAA's a law from the 90s. So it's not a one-to-one set of standards or specifics about what type of engineering decisions you should be making. It's vague, and that causes a lot of difficulties and kind of headaches. Yeah. And two, there's no real such thing as being HIPAA certified. Whereas like for SOC 2 type 2, for example, right, or high trust, it's very traditional. You get an auditor, they review it, and they basically give you an opinion or statement saying, hey, yes, like you've checked the boxes, you're good. You can feel good about yourself. HIPAA is a much more kind of general thing. You can get third-party audits on it. At Healthy, we do, but it's definitely less common. So I think with HIPAA, it's dealing with a lot of the uncertainties. And then also it just, really drives a lot of those vendor decisions and it makes things a lot more expensive, right? So a lot of times with HIPAA, one of the big things is having a business associates agreement in place with people you share PHI with. And for a lot of vendors, that's kind of one of those things where as soon as you mention those three letters, they're like, okay, you're on our enterprise plan and your subscription needs to start at like $5,000 a month and not our $5 a month plan. So a lot of those startup costs just get a lot higher because you're not able to use the free version. You're not able to use the basic version. You're kind of forced into this enterprise funnel. And there are also some vendors that just won't sign it. So but there have definitely been a lot of tools over the years at Healthie that we would have loved to use that we just were not able to. It was just a non-starter because of HIPAA compliance. So it really is kind of an all-encompassing thing. It's something that we definitely think a lot about every day.
Yeah. And thinking about just the development process and building a product that you're working on, in terms of implementing, you talked about rip and replace. And as a founder, I'm like, my heart stopped because anything you have to rip and replace or the technical debt that you have to then kind of evaluate and change. What is that onboarding process or the relationship that you have with sort of customers? And not only what's the most compelling reason for them to use the platform and start building on it, but also how is that onboarding process and how do you get them fully integrated? How much time is, I guess, spent on that alone?
Yeah. Great question. So we really start working with customers all along their life cycle, right? So we have customers who start with us as two founders in a venture studio, no product, no customers, et cetera. And then we also start with people when they've already raised over $1 billion of venture funding in some cases and are very, very far along. A Series E, Series F, where we work with companies that are already public, right? So we really run that whole gamut. And I think that's unintuitive to a lot of people because, a lot of times you have to choose one. But why I think it works at Healthie is for a couple of kind of core principles, right? A, we're not prescriptive. So we're a toolbox that you can really use in the way you want to use. We don't force certain decisions on you. We really focus on flexibility. That lets us serve a very wide use case of different company sizes. And two, we're modular. So we have a ton of functionality. We've been building for 7.5 years, but if you don't need to use part of our platform, you can turn it off. And what that means is like when we're working with people just starting out, they may use almost every feature, right? Because that's kind of, they don't have anything else in place. But when we come to a company that's very mature, that has thousands of employees, they may start with us just for scheduling, or just for the electronic health record, or just for the patient video chat feature. And they're able to turn off everything else when they start and then turn more things on over time. So we actually, versus a straight up rip and replace everything, we're able to kind of slot in around what they already have and what they like. And that makes it much easier to get onboarded. And then as far as getting them onboarded, I mean, frankly, it's one of the things that we've had to get really, really good at. Yeah. We invest a ton of money in onboarding, right? In our customer success team. We include it all as part of the cost. It's not something that you can not sign up for. We handle data migration, imports, training, developer support, et cetera. I like to really always say we keep pace with our customers. So we love supporting aggressive timelines and we can really make them happen. And that's some of the stuff I get the most personal enrichment out of doing. So in short, I think it's having a flexible platform, giving customers a lot of options, and then being able to be there with them and provide guidance so they can basically implement the right options for them.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the traction. How many people or how many customers are using the platform? How many companies have you helped set up kind of their businesses and the level of engagement that you're seeing, not only from conception until now, but what are you excited about in terms of the near future and the growth?
Yeah. So we work with thousands and thousands of provider organizations. We cover millions and millions of patient lives. Companies that use Healthie have raised over $2 billion in venture. And we really work with a big range. We work with both digital healthcare companies, like kind of cutting edge, often venture-backed companies. And then we also do kind of more traditional healthcare, concierge medicine, health systems, medical spas, et cetera. And we also do kind of mom and pop private practices. So we really run the whole gamut, which is really, really cool. It always keeps it interesting. And like a lot of what we think about is building a platform to really support kind of all those use cases in a really flexible way, right? It's not like we have different code bases. It's all the same product, but we just build it in a very kind of flexible, powerful way that makes it work for all these different areas. As far as kind of upcoming, I mean, we're really excited to just double down on the things that have been going great. Like our internal motto this year is to go from startup to scale up. So a lot of what we're thinking about is, hey, Healthie's an 80-ish person company right now, kind of at our current size. Things are going well, but we know that when we double internally, when we double our customer base externally, the things that have gotten us here aren't necessarily going to be the things that get us there. So we're thinking a lot about it. Internal processes, hiring the right people, organization structure. We were just talking about onboarding. Like What's the right way to have a really, really organized onboarding? So that's a lot of what we're thinking about. But I mean, what's great about Healthie is like, we're a company that the way we do sales is you get on a call with us, you bring us kind of a feature requirement list or problems you're having, and we explain how Healthie solves them. So that's in a really, really great place, and just want to make sure it stays in a great place as we continue to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. If I always like to think about kind of high level or even just thinking outside in, what are some of the biggest challenges that Healthie faces today?
Yeah. I mean, I think really the biggest thing is that startup to scale transition, right? Like, to give an example, especially a year ago, we had like half the people working here that we do now, even less. And it's very often like, hey, would people get on calls, or would we be providing support or doing sales? And we often hear feedback from customers that, hey, it feels like we're talking to the founders. And often it was because they were talking to the founders, or because they were talking to employees that have been here 5-6 years, who knew Healthie like the back of our hand and are just kind of really, really important core team members. And that's amazing. And that level of experience and feeling cared for and feeling supported is so important. So the question is, how do you just do that at a much, much larger scale, right? And my co-founder and I, we can't like double the amount of time we have in a day. So what we need to do is hire great people, allow them to succeed, empower them to really be able to handle that scale. So I think that's a lot of the challenges and stuff that we're facing. I mean, they're definitely good problems to have, right? They're champagne problems, but it's something we're excited to solve.
Yeah. Yeah. If everything goes though, what's the long-term vision for Healthie?
Yeah. And going back to co-founder relationship, I mean, I think one of the things that I got so lucky about, even though I started a business with somebody I literally just met, is that we've always been really long-term aligned on the vision for Healthie. And what that vision is we're not in a rush. We're not trying to like build it a certain size and flip it. We really, really believe in the mission and in the impact we're having, and in building kind of a generationally defining. So what does that mean? Kind of getting a little more specific, right? We always like to joke we're like 7 years into being a 13-year overnight success. But the way I really see it is our healthcare system in this country, as everybody knows in the US, is just totally, totally broken, right? Right. Nobody is happy about it. And we always complain, and there's all these initiatives, and nothing ever seems to really, really get better. But what Healthie really does is it allows kind of all these people and their ideas, all these innovators, to be able to really focus on delivering that care. And when you look at our customer base, right, most of them are delivering proactive care, right? They're treating addiction, not an overdose. They're treating weight loss, not a heart attack. They're treating diabetes, not an amputation. And if we're able to really enable all these cool, new, unique care that really help our healthcare system in this country get more proactive, that I think could fundamentally shift the balance of how we do healthcare in this country. And I think that's what we're so excited about. Now, and in doing so, and being that core infrastructure layer to power that, you're not just building a great philanthropical business, right? Even though you are having a lot of positive impact, you're also building a really, really great financial business as well. And that's another one of our big principles here. One of the most powerful things we can tell people is, hey, we'll be around in 10 years. So Healthie's been profitable for the past 4 years or so, right? We keep an incredibly close eye on the cash, because being sustainable, being not reliant on external funding is so important, because that's what allows us to make the right decisions. And that's what allows us to not just survive, but really thrive over the coming years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so exciting to hear about the progress and the impact that Healthie will have in your industry that you're working on, but also with other companies and the success that they have and the experimentation that they'll want to go through. I would like the next section, I call it my founder FAQ. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions and we'll see where we get. So first question is, what's particularly hard about your job?
I think what's hard about my job and kind of what I'm uniquely good at is just balancing a ton of different plates and skills kind of at once, right? So like my day to day jumps from like having one-on-ones with our employer base and being a people manager to jumping in on some of our toughest engineering problems and being kind of like a direct contributor to being on sales calls, being on implementation calls. So really just kind of balancing all of that, I think is just a really big blend of skill sets. But I think ultimately the buck stops with me, where if a customer's having problems, if a server's having problems, if an employee's having problems, et cetera, like all that really rolls up, and being able to manage all of those and kind of get it done quickly and being able to enable us being healthcare critical, business critical infrastructure is really what I spend a lot of my day doing.
Love that. What's your prediction for how healthcare will transition, not only with obviously the injection of services like Healthie, being able to help other providers or other individuals shift the paradigm of healthcare services, but what's your prediction in terms of the traditional healthcare model where you have a provider, you have a primary healthcare physician, it takes forever to get in touch with them. And you might not know extremely like what is being involved in the healthcare services, but what's your prediction for how that changes, how the experience will change? And if you have any wild predictions for how the structure of, say, insurance and providers and the whole kind of payments process, we'd love to hear your thoughts in your insight with Healthie.
Yeah. So I think ultimately healthcare in the system is getting more proactive, right? Right. Like, as I mentioned, like I think more and more people are really realizing that an ounce of prevention actually is worth a pound of cure. And that's happening both with all these kind of people with new innovative care models. It's happening with insurers who are realizing that they'll save a lot more money if they treat what's causing the problem and not the outcome of the problem. So I think that's really a big thing we enable. I think you're seeing consumers take more ownership of their healthcare, right? They want to be the ones choosing more of these solutions. They are no longer accepting of kind of how healthcare traditionally works and having these really kind of distant provider experiences. And then I think you are seeing people, value-based care has been a buzzword for probably decades at this point, but I think we continue to see movement towards that and really being able to not just provide care, but also demonstrate the results of how that care is helping is going to become increasingly important.
Yeah. Yeah. From a technical standpoint or perspective, being that you've worked on quite a few products and Healthie is a product that you're fully invested in now, I'm always interested in white label services and being able to quickly bring up a system in half, if not a fraction of the time as traditional means. That you've said you don't even need an in-house development team. Sometimes you need maybe one technical founder or one technical engineer to at least maintain a service or product. What does that mean for companies being able to come on board? And are you seeing other, outside of healthcare and Healthie, other kind of white label services interjecting or speeding up the process of companies being built in other industries as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think white label services are great if done correctly, right? So like with Healthie, you can get your own web application that's very customized. You can get your own app in the app store without writing a line of code. And it ends up being kind of very simple for you. And I think there's a couple important things there. One, like Healthie is very flexible. So it is actually very customized to the customer. And it's also easy to change. So like we've had people pivot their business models on our white label in a matter of days, just by checking and unchecking some boxes, where if they had built in-house, they would have had to throw out a ton of code and kind of re-add it. But then what's also really important is the company offering the white labels needs to be offering the white labels in a way that they can still be a technically competent and kind of very efficient service provider. I know of people offering white label solutions where they literally have a different code base per white label. They are submitting the app once. There's no regular updates. Like they have no ability to really orchestrate it. And like that is no good because then you're getting kind of crappy tech, and who cares what the branding is if the underlying tech is not very good. So I think that's one of the things that I think we're really uniquely good at Healthie is we offer these very customizable white labels, but it's all the same code base. It's all the same product. And we don't slow down on feature delivery velocity because we're a white label platform. And then the other thing when it comes to white labeled and to no code in general is I do think at a certain scale, you're going to outgrow at least parts of a white label. Yeah. And that's why I think what's also so important about Healthie is we build these white labeled interfaces on top of our API. And then we make that same API available to customers to build on top of themselves. So if you're a no code tool that just has the interface, you're going to have customers graduate off the platform. But if you're like Healthie and you have both kind of that no code interface and the ability to write code to extend that interface, I think that's where a lot of the uniqueness comes in. And that's really what lets us scale up to these very, very large organizations.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you go to find good people and how do you assess good talent?
So my favorite way is good people know good people. So our favorite way to find new people is company referrals or people in my personal network that I know very well and have a lot of trust for who will throw people out. So that's my favorite. Beyond that, I mean, I think from a top of the funnel perspective, we're very open. We have job postings on Greenhouse, on LinkedIn, on AngelList, and all these different places. That I think ends up being a little less. But when it comes to evaluation, I think we have a pretty straightforward interview process. And basically for most roles, it's, hey, have you done something like this in your prior experience? Can you describe doing it in prior experience in a way that like clearly shows that you know what you're talking about? Are you a good culture fit, right? Like one of our core principles is we don't hire assholes, but beyond that, like we really like people who have some personal connection to healthcare. Like a lot of our developers are former biology majors who are career switchers or people who came from other career paths but just have some knowledge of the healthcare system. And then finally, we do like basic sanity checks on have you been telling us like the truth during this process, right? Whether it's a coding interview or whether it's a background check or reference checks. Because transparently, we have found when we skip those steps, you do occasionally get people who are great at interviewing, but don't actually have any real capabilities underneath that superficial level. So that's really kind of what we do. And then ultimately we believe in that process and it's been going well, but we do love referrals from other people at the company.
Yeah. I love that. Thinking about fundraising and being that health tech is so popular because I think everyone's trying to address the problem that you mentioned early in the show, which is healthcare is kind of broken or it's fragmented and no one's necessarily satisfied on either layer, right? Doctors are maybe not getting the right patients or getting enough patients, or insurances are having it difficult to actually service people. Insurance providers are dealing with inflated costs and disgruntled customers, and patients, of course, want the healthcare that they need. Thinking about healthcare and the platform, just going back to my question here, when thinking about not only finding the right people, but kind of lost my train of thought here. I totally was on a rabbit hole. What was my original question there? It was
fundraising.
Fundraising, thank you. With thinking about kind of in a Red Sea environment, how do you not only differentiate your product, but also how do you address kind of and find the right investors, find the right group around you to help, who understand and care for the product vision? What advice would you give to finders looking for those people?
Yeah. So I think we've had an interesting fundraising journey, right? Where we started the company being this kind of like dietitian focused company, or almost like a mind body competitor. We raised the seed round in 2016, or what at the time was considered a seed. We raised $1 million. And then we went all in on being kind of this like, hey, venture back, scale, like let's.
Yeah.
And what we ended up doing is we almost killed the company because we didn't really invest enough in product. We hired a bunch of sales and marketing people, and we were trying to grow a lot in a space that frankly wasn't a venture backable space. Like selling software for $90 a month, you could build a wonderful business, but in the space we were in, it was not a venture scale business. So we hit a wall really, really hard and got to a point where basically like clearly nobody would have put more funding into the business. So we ended up having to do a round of layoffs. We rebuilt the entire product. This is back in 2018.
Yeah.
And we kind of came out of that with a product that suddenly people loved, that was cash flow positive. So we could kind of grow in our own power. And we thought we'd do that. And then this digital health side of the market opened, where when we did that rebuild, we were able to sell this kind of much more sophisticated technology, which let us start going more and more in market. And then instead of selling $90 a month software, you're selling like $90,000 a year software, even more than that. And that really changed the dynamics. And then what also was happening was we were in this health tech infrastructure was not a word in 2016. And then COVID happens. And then like 2020, 2021, it becomes like the hottest space. So all these people were emerging, all this money's flowing in. And we really realized that we had almost done an about face. We had done an amazing job of building a product, but we were just did a terrible job of marketing ourselves. We were spending all this time and energy building the best product and helping our customers. So we did an A round in 2022 from some great investors, and really to help ensure we were in the conversation and really to double down on building the best product and customer experience. So to date, Healthie's raised about $17 million. But what was really great about our last round is we raised not having to raise money, right? We were a profitable company. So that gave us a lot of kind of control over the situation. And that really help us identify and choose the right investors for Healthie. And I was talking about and as far as who those are, I was talking about the fact that I have a aligned long-term vision with my co-founder. And it's also really, really important to have an aligned long-term vision with your investors. So when we got a bunch of term sheets, and really what we were looking at during that process was, hey, is this somebody who will trust us as founders to run the business, right? We didn't want somebody who kind of micromanage or second guess every decision. Right. And two, somebody who was aligned with kind of the long term, where the way we become a huge company is not bouncing like crazy, hiring a ton of cold callers and trying to have the best next quarter, but we're really trying to have the best next 5 years, the best next 10 years. So we found some great investors, both some institutional firms, and then we also brought on a lot of individual angel investors who are operators in healthcare or healthcare technology. And those have been amazing. Some of them are our customers or have now turned into our customers. They're a great source of referrals. And having those people who are now basically financially bought into Healthie has been amazing as well.
Yeah. It's incredible to see the progression, especially with it's almost like a pivot, but it really is just adding more in terms of what you're able to affect and how the infrastructure really does impact full types of healthcare providers and professionals. It's always fascinating because pivoting is one of the hardest things, but one founder said on the show, product market fit is a point in time. and not a consistent thing. And I thought that was there very much representative of the story you kind of described there, which is you had a viable product, you shifted to work on something that encompasses more features and services. And then once you build that, then you have to spend money on marketing and sales and really getting your product out there. It's so exciting to hear that founder journey and the evolution. It just seems like done the right way. I always like to ask this question. If you had a magic wand, what's one thing that you would want your company to have now versus wait for it or have it in the future? What's one thing that you would for right now?
I think the most important thing about most companies is the people, and we have a lot of really great open roles. So if I had a magic wand, we would have them all filled with amazing people who are fully trained and ramped up, and that would be great. That's a lot of my time. And it's a multi-month process to find the right people, and then it's a multi-month process to train people up. So yeah, if I had a magic wand, people.
I love that. I always like to ask this next question, not only for the audience, but for selfish research purposes. Whether it's early in your career or now, what books or people have influenced you the most?
Yeah, that's a good question. I read a ton. And honestly, it's one of the things I had stopped doing in the middle of the company. Like I used to do it a lot before starting Healthie, and then I got so busy, and frankly, we'd spend a bunch of time. I still spend time on Twitter, but on all these things instead of reading actual books. So I really do love reading. I hit last year, I think 48 books. And I think they're just really, really helpful. As far as kind of what has influenced me, I mean, I think I don't read a ton of like business self-help books, if that makes sense, or business advice books. I really like reading mostly nonfiction about interesting people doing interesting things, right? So like I just finished reading the book Endurance, which is about Ernest Shackleton and that expedition that went completely terribly wrong. And they got stuck literally in Antarctica for years and had to climb back over the ice and on these small boats back to civilization. And like, that's an inspiring book. Does it teach me anything about building a product directly? No, but does it put me in the right mindset to do it? I'd say yes. So yeah, I would say there's definitely a lot of more like specific names. Like I grew up reading Paul Graham essays, like that's big. Like on the tech end, the 37 Signals or Nate Berkopec on like the Rails performance, getting way in the weeds. So there's a whole range there, but I think most of the most enriching stuff I've read has been a little higher level, just interesting, true stories that I think has expanded my worldview in a way that reading just tech documentation may not.
Yeah. One founder said it before. It's like learning a new perspective or a new kind of thought process or methodology versus in terms of attacking certain situations. And it's cool as founders. I always like to ask that question because I think we're able to extract bits and pieces of information that are super helpful and valuable out of almost anything we ingest. So it's interesting about hearing about what you ingest yourself. And Cavan, I know we're at the end of the episode here, but I do want to give you a chance to give us your plugs. Let us know where we can be a fan of Healthie, where we can support you as a founder, where we can know more about the product. And if I'm somebody who wants to engage with it, where we can find and start using the platform.
Yeah. So if you're building a company in the digital health space, please definitely take a look at Healthie for your infrastructure platform or gethealthie.com, gethealthie.com. If you're looking for a job, we're hiring for a ton of roles. So if you go on our LinkedIn, you can see all of those there. You can follow us on Twitter. Those are probably the main ones. If you ever have questions for me directly, I'm just Cavan at gethealthie.com. So always feel free to reach out.
Amazing. Cavan, it was so amazing not only learning about your founder journey and what was the inspiration for you and also, what brought you and your co-founder together, but also the healthcare space and how Healthie is really changing it in the way of giving accessibility, but also helping kind of accelerate ideas more quickly and more readily so that we can start testing them and seeing as a consumer what's going to be valuable for us. So I hope you enjoyed yourself. And Cavan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Great time.